Hi guys, and welcome to It's a Heartthang. My name is Cynthia. And today I want to go in and share something that I spoke about back in October of 2020, and it was called Going Through the Void. And when you go through the void, as I explained, and as Sanaya Roman, the book Spiritual Growth, which is what I had studied many years ago and pulled a lot of that information from her book, is that when you're going through the void, it's in a space of whatever you knew, whatever you thought you knew, whatever was comfortable to you, all of that goes away. And you're in this space where nothing makes sense anymore. Nothing is what you remember. Nothing is what you have control of. And I went on to say that when you're in the void, that is when you can grow the most, because now you have to let go of what you thought you knew. You can't take in anything new until you allow what you have inside of you to become open, an open vessel to bring in new information. So today I want to take some information from a book that I've been reading over the last few days. And the name of the book is Spiritual Liberation, and it's by Michael Bernard Beckwith. And the chapter that I'm looking at is chapter 18, How to Make It Through the Night. And it's on page 237. And this is his take on going through the void that Sanaya Roman talked about in her book, Spiritual Growth. So I want to read several excerpts from this chapter. And I'm going to start on page 237. So just listen to these words. And these words are really, eye-opening is what I would say. The fine print of spiritual awakening cannot ignore those times known as the dark night of the soul. This night is like no other. It is inescapable, even desirable for those who sincerely desire the transforming touch of the Spirit. This night, which can last moments, days, weeks, even years, feels like the bottom has fallen out of our lives. Our friends and family don't understand what we're going through, and whatever compassion they offer can't reach the depth of our despair. The spiritual path we're following has become as dry as dust and clearly isn't working. The density of the external world presses itself against your soul, weighing heavily upon your heart. Maybe God isn't real after all, and enlightenment is just fiction. What we're going through is what I call a cosmic shift internally. Things no longer line up the way we remember. Our likes and dislikes are changing. On page 238, Reverend Bernard Beckwith writes, "The endurance of darkness is preparation for great light." You're growing. You're unfolding. And he goes on to say on page 238 and 239, while it seems more natural than unnatural to reject the dark night experience, one does so at the expense of a profound purification and consciousness. Being caught between two worlds, one's current way of being and birthing the next level of awareness, we wonder if the spiritual benefits will even come close to outweighing the grueling pain of sticking it out. And what I'm going to say about this is that, and I go back to how Oprah said, what do you know for sure? The one thing I know for sure is that you grow the most when you go through the most. And I used the example of an athlete, and my daughter's an athlete. And what I will say is that when an athlete puts themselves through grueling workouts and grueling practices, they're actually putting a lot of pain and a lot of pressure on their bodies. And when they go out on that field, or they go out on that court, they are able to perform at such a level that a lot of athletes who don't do that same or don't have that same work ethics cannot play at. So when I say you grow the most when you go through the most, you need that tension, you need that pull that helps you to grow into things that you would never ever experience if you didn't have that type of environment. So I wanted to mention this, and this is one of those things that cause us to not place ourselves in situations where we have to experience pain and struggle in order to grow. We want a guarantee. We want to know that if we put ourselves through this, that when we come out on the other side, we know that we're going to get this, or we're going to be this. But that's where you have to trust and believe. You have to trust and believe the process. There are no guarantees. On page 240, Michael Bernard Beckwith says, I speak from experience when I say that a dark night experience puts an end to your life as you know it, including those parts you would like to cling to and never change. And what I take from this is basically things are changing and unfolding without our permission. And these changes and this unfoldment feels uncomfortable. And what we seek is to be comfortable. But what I will tell you is that what you resist will persist. And that resistance is the ego trying to remain in control, trying to keep things the way that's comfortable and that they're used to. So your ego is basically coming alive and saying, no, 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 we're not going to change what we know. We're going to stay the same. And this is where, when you're in that dark night of the soul, even when you're trying to resist it, that change is going to still push forward. And so the best thing to do is surrender. But we resist. And like I said, that comes from the ego. And I kind of want to read what he says about the ego on this. He goes on to say on page 241, another of the ego's rackets is the wishful thinking syndrome. I wish I were someone else, we lament. Somewhere else, experiencing something else, anything but this. Such an attitude has no transformative value at all. Nor does mentally or verbally screaming positive affirmations in order to bypass the darkness we're facing, to drown out the scary inner voice that says, psst, hey, you're not okay. On page 243, he further explains the ego by saying this: a moment of total ego collapse reveals all the ways that we've been manipulating, controlling, and coaxing circumstances to go our way. He also says that when you ask the question, where or how can I give of myself, that this calls a soul expansion to occur, so that where you were constricted, you begin to expand. Where you were withholding, you now choose to give. This breaks the stronghold of the egoic mind's grip on our human frailties. Punitive thoughts like, I made a mistake and now I'm paying for it. This must be my karma. Or, who is to blame for this, becomes neutralized. He goes on to say that letting go of the judging mind that labels our experiences as one of lack, pain, limitation, frustration, failure, confusion, or aridity in our spiritual practices is accomplished through selfless service. So, what this means to me is that when you start to say, where and how can I give of myself, that opens you up to expanding. It opens you up to allowing that egoic control to be released. When you go out and say, do something for a nonprofit, say feeding the homeless or picking up trash in the park, somehow your inner spirit tends to gravitate towards the giving, and that giving causes you to be open to receiving. And like I've said in the past, that when you give of yourself, you can't give it away, because with the law of reciprocity, what you give, you also receive. So you are now becoming aligned with universal laws, the law of reciprocity. So this is an opportunity for you to give of yourself. And as you're giving, you're still receiving. One last excerpt from this chapter, and it's on page 245. And it's a real important concept. And he says, "No longer do I struggle against uncomfortable circumstances, feelings, and experiences in which I cannot see the immediate way out. I listen to their message. I receive their gifts. When all seems dark, I know that I am in a development process that is guided and lighted by the Spirit within. I go forward in confidence and trust." And this is where, like I said, there are no guarantees. There's nothing that's going to guarantee that as you go through this process that what you're seeking is going to manifest. But you have to trust and believe in the process. You have to know that as your spirit and your inner soul is guiding you, that it knows things that you don't know. We are spiritual beings here in a human suit. We are having a human experience, even though we are spiritual beings. So sometimes that spiritual inner person has to come out and has to take the wheel and start to move you in a direction that you know nothing about, that you have not experienced yet. And only then can you begin to unfold and grow. The more you push back, the more it's going to push. And at some point, like I said, surrender. Surrender is going to be the only way to move out of what we call the dark night of the soul. And the way Sanaya Roman says in her book, that those who are spiritually evolved sometimes will seek out going into the void in order for them to grow, in order for them to learn new lessons. And so this is the same thing with the dark night of the soul. It allows you to grow. It allows you to unfold at faster and more rapid paces than you normally would just by reading books and having these spiritual affirmations that you repeat. Sometimes you have to go into that place where you know nothing in order to learn something. So if these words from the book Spiritual Liberation, as well as me giving my insight, has helped you in any way, please by all means like, subscribe, share what it is that you've gone through. So until next time, my name is Cynthia, and it's a Heartthang, guys. Bye.